In a televised address to the nation, Pakistan's Prime Minister said his forces would respond to India.
We pledge that the blood of every fallen martyr will be avenged. The coward enemy targeted innocent civilians and showed themselves as mighty and brave. But last night, by Almighty's grace, we gave them a befitting response in our own way to the enemy.
At least 15 people have been killed in cross-border shelling in Indian-administered Kashmir. Several houses were destroyed following heavy shelling and gunfire. Residents have fled some areas. And several airlines are rerouting or cancelling their flights between Asia and Europe because of the violence between India and Pakistan. More than 24 commercial flights were diverted to avoid Pakistani airspace, with some flights from India to Europe were also seen taking longer routes, and around a dozen Indian airports were shut. Uday Chandra is an assistant professor of government at Georgetown University here in Qatar. He's joining us here in the studio. Great to see you, Uday. Thank you for coming in. We've heard more from Pakistani officials who are saying that they're going to take the war with India to its logical conclusions. This is actually from Prime Minister Shahbaz. How do you expect them to respond, given their responses in the past when cross-border tensions have flared up in 2019 and 2016?
I think there's already been a response. The Pakistani media, and not the Indian media, has reported that certain aircrafts were shot down. India has vigorously disputed it, and in fact, there's a media ban on saying that that happened. At this point, we're in the fog of war. We don't really know. We don't have, independent media confirmation. But it's quite likely that there was already retaliation. There'll probably be some more retaliation. But I also saw the Pakistan foreign minister's statement that they don't want all-out war. And so, there's a lot of pressure to de-escalate and not make it a tit-for-tat. A game of chicken, so to speak.
We're certainly in the fog of war, aren't we? Because we've seen those reports in Pakistani media that they've shot down Indian airplanes. But we don't see anything about pilots, for example.
Well, last time, there was the famous case of Abhinandan, who was shot down, and he was returned by the Pakistani side. So in some sense, the 2019 equivalent of what we're looking at ended with the status quo. I mean, nothing changed territorially. And a lot of it then and now, the so-called surgical strikes or airstrikes, it's really about appeasing a domestic constituency. And I think it's really about media management and domestic audiences. Because when foreign ministers speak, diplomats speak, they're talking differently to the US, to the EU, to China. So it just seems that there seems to be two different things going on.
Okay. But do you think that this is in any way different to 2019? I'm thinking about how Pakistan carried out strikes in Punjab, Pakistan's most populous province, for the first time in around 50 years.
I think it's very different because civilians have been killed, as opposed to security personnel in 2019. And those kinds of strikes keep happening, and they kind of block some of them as well. But I think the civilian attacks, because it's seen as terrorism, and there's the sense that the government wasn't able to protect, the Indian government wasn't able to protect its citizens. So there's a kind of embarrassment. When the 2008 attacks happened in Mumbai, the Home Minister had to step down. So far, the media is controlled enough that calls for resignations have not happened. At least from the opposition or anywhere. But it's clearly a security intelligence failure. They don't want to address it or talk about it or face questions about it. They want to control the narrative. And so that's where we are.
Uday Chandra, thank you very much for your insights on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.